Oh, good. Okay. So we've got kind of a lengthy agenda, and we're going to try to keep the presentation to about an hour because we know what Leader Bud's all about. And we're going to go through it. Like I said, keep it to an hour. We've got a lot of people here that are going to be talking. And at the very end, I think we're going to be able to open it up for a few questions. And if we don't have time at the very end, then you can post them. There's a place on our website that you can post questions or even write them down. And then we can post those questions up because they may be questions that other people want to know something about. So we're going to go through meeting our team and then talk about our mission statement, where we've been and what our next steps are. And then we'll talk about the facility and a needs assessment, right into just the design and the bond information. That's probably one of the more important things of why a lot of people are here today. And then the construction schedule. So different people are going to present. We've got 3 board members here and various other committee members, but I'm going to let Allison Welsh, she's our Conestoga School Board. This one here.
Should have worked.
Oh. School Board President.
There we go.
Take it from here.
Now to see Carol.
Mr.
Hi,
Carroll.
welcome. I'm Allison. I think I know everybody here. I think everybody's been in this building before, maybe even as recently as Friday when we had our spring carnival, and the PTO president is here. And I know that's a great example of how this school is used by the community for a community event that's open to everyone. So thanks, Jenny, for your work on that event. Talk about meet the team. So the team is the group of people who have been meeting on a very regular basis with each other to develop what we feel is the best plan based on knowledge and data and input. And that team includes our administrators from both buildings. So Dr. Johnson, our superintendent, Mr. Geis, and Mr. Dennis from the elementary school. In addition to, we included our admin team who work directly with programming, the curriculum, the programming, determining what our needs are to meet standards today, exceed standards, and continue to grow our program. So Lisa Bergmeyer's here, Director of Curriculum, and Amanda Wright is not here today, but she is our Director of Student Services. So to kind of define, if you don't know what that person does, she works with special education, she works with kids who have interventions, kids who need therapy of some sort. So she's a great asset to that team too. Just like any school board committee, there are 3 board members on this committee, Tracy Preifert, Dave Dusick, and myself. And then we have 3 awesome community members who are just giving of their time and helping help us with the community viewpoint and help guiding us there. And that's Connie Reimers-Hild, Gary Todd, and Greg Page. They all have very different, diverse backgrounds, and they've been tremendous assets to our team. And then finally, we have our DLR is our architectural firm that we've been working with. And today we have Darren Hannigan and Justin Tegels here. And they have programs that they use to help guide decisions like how many spaces you need, how big those spaces need to be based on data input, class sizes, how many times a day the class is offered, things like that. And then finally, Boyd Jones Construction, our construction manager at risk. And we have representatives from that group here today too. Emily and Mitch are both here from Boyd. So thank you. This button. Okay. Mission statement. All of you are Conestoga people. You all know our mission statement, and that is to inspire and prepare students for life. And that drives this committee. So that is what this committee is trying to accomplish, is making sure our students have the facilities and programs to accommodate their inspiration and preparing them as they leave Conestoga Public Schools to be worthwhile citizens and represent us in that effect. There's some nice quotes here. This is my home. I love working here. I want to be a school that others look up to. This is true. We have great parents, kids, and teachers. Our community is very supportive. There are things we can improve on. We can always do better, and I don't want our facilities to be a detriment. Where are we and what is next? So what have we been doing since we last saw you? I've already talked about the team of people who continue to meet weekly or every other week and have been very dedicated to making sure that what we're doing is what seems to be the smart decision and based on input from our admin team, our instructors, and our community. We have held 5 public meetings. This would be the 6th public meeting. We've done numerous online surveys, and you've probably participated in some. There was a survey that was sent to all parents. There was also a survey that we did from voter data that was random, that went out to voters to ask what they thought about the building project and provided input that we've been using as well. Staff interviews. We've had some really productive interviews with our staff to help determine what spaces we need and why, and what could make your science room better. So they'll talk about that today as well. Again, we've had multiple building and site assessments that'll also be discussed. DLR has a cool program called Space Program, and it is what we use to determine the sizes of spaces and the number of spaces. We've also participated in many school tours. We toured Plattsmouth and their new CTE area, and several schools, Sandy Creek and Louisville and so forth, just to go to schools that have gone through or going through a similar process. So today, May 1st, is the first committee meeting for this bond election. The next meeting is this Wednesday at the high school. Same information, different location. And then all leading up to May 10th, which is the primary election in the state of Nebraska. Other important dates are just are listed here: voting in person, our community meeting dates, and the bond date. So with that, I'm going to introduce Dave Dusick to talk about the facility and program assessment. And Justin Tagle, sorry about that, Justin.
No, that's all right. We're gonna tag on this one a little bit.
So to move the slide, to just hit that arrow right there.
Okay, great, great. Okay, so we're gonna start with, like Allison said, we went through a whole facilities assessment to try to determine, not just from the space that we need for the kids, but we talked to our teachers, what kind of classes are coming up? What do we need to be putting into the school to make sure that we can stay current and provide the experiences that our students need to keep ahead? So when we look at the junior and senior high, there are a number of things on here. I'm gonna go to this side actually a little bit easier. A lot of these things in here are addressing the code issues that we have. So you can see there's safety and security. That would be the main entrance, and that is going to get redesigned so that when you come into our school initially, you actually have to go through the office space to get into the building. Right now, if we do buzz someone in, it's kind of a free range for where they can go in the school. So that's something that we're going to be shifting to make sure that we provide a little bit better and another layer of security for our students and our staff. Classroom additions, you could see on the boards over there. We have classroom additions at the high school. We're really looking to, with the science rooms, instead of renovating those spaces, new spaces is a better way to go, because it gives us the opportunity to start from scratch, build a better space for what we need right now. And we've talked with our teachers to basically determine, what do we need to do? What can we do now? What can we not do? Let's build the classroom the right way. Fire sprinklers, we're going to get those. Those are a code thing. There's a lot of things with electrical, and through the storm that came through December, we're still discovering things that we're having to fix. So we are getting some insurance money for those things, but there are also other things that just need to be updated and get up to code. When we go through the interior renovations, Allison mentioned CTE, so that's career and technical education. That's a whole wing that we want to make sure we get in there and we update. So there'll be a lot of gutting through there, new equipment coming in, making sure that our air filtration system, the electrical, all of those things are up to date. When we talk to our teachers, one of the biggest pieces that they mentioned to us was that they wanted classrooms that were transferable and open. They wanted to be able to move things around and have a different setup for different projects. Having the electrical drop down from the ceiling, because right now they said we don't have enough, and what we do have is not where we need it. So they're pulling basically extension cords all over the place to try to get things working the right way for them. So just updating those things, getting things in order where they could be more efficient, more effective with the classes that they're teaching. The ag renovation, so we're going to basically go through and we want to redo the whole ag section there and get those floors up to snuff. We got to put a drain in there, new tile, clean it up so it's just a more functional room and a more functional space for our students there. Drama, we're gonna do some stage improvements, some storage. We're short on those things. Fix the acoustics. We've already put up a brand new, basically, what's the word for it? What's it called? The new curtain. Thank you. I'm like, is it a curtain? What do they call it for stage? So that new curtain came in and they've got that up. So that's already done. But we also want to do the light and sound booth because right now, again, they're pulling cords over every time they do a production and trying to get that set up back there in a more professional way so that our students would learn how to actually use that equipment in the right way. The media center. This is what is currently considered the library area now. And it's a huge space, and we feel that right now it's basically being underutilized. We use it a lot for a lot of different things, but we think we can incorporate a lot better space in there for teaching our kids. Computer labs in there, media room in there, some places that will be able to have group meetings, and spaces that you can have different projects that are ongoing. One of the things that we see is we kind of consider that what we call the kind of the hub area, where if you've got a project that is starting out in ag and they're trying to develop a product or market something, so they'll have the ag students involved. They will get the science students involved for certain things. They may get technology involved for certain things. Maybe it's writing and putting together a publication, so they're going to get the English department together. So this is kind of a place where not just one classroom is going to go, but a number of different classrooms can go, come together, meet as a team, and create a product or create some sort of project. Go down to the small group and flex classrooms. There are a number of things right now that 20 years ago, 30 years ago didn't exist in our schools. There are programs that are state and federally backed that we have to have in our schools to support our students. They didn't exist then. We didn't have classes built for them. Now is the time when we do this project here, we would be able to put those things in now to accommodate those students and those teachers. You'll hear people say, well, there's people sometimes learning in the classroom, sometimes in stairwells. Those are programs that should have their own spaces. We just don't have the small meeting spaces for them right now. So that's at the high school and also the elementary that you'll see. Special education, that is what I'm talking about there as well. Some of those spaces, they need their own classrooms, and they're not big classrooms. A lot of times they're smaller spaces that 1 or 2 students and a teacher can go in there and get their work done. If you look at the public staff restrooms, a lot of that is code. Anything we do now, we are short on all of those things. So any new building that we do would have to include those as well. The multi-purpose addition or the second gymnasium is something that we found is a need as well. We've got a lot of sports teams all the way from the youth up to the high school that are using those facilities. And we've had practices this last year start as early as 6 o'clock in the morning and go till 10 o'clock at night to try to accommodate those. And it's used pretty much every period during the day. So it's a big part of what we'd like to get done as well. And the locker room renovation, more storage. If you go into the administration, so this is where they would be moving out of the library kind of area where their current building is. They'd be going up front to this so they can add that level of security. So just move on to the next one.
All right, so our CTE program is career technical education. The current programs in agriculture are intro to ag, food and natural resources, animal science, plant science, natural resources, floriculture, agribusiness, and food science. So you can see the list on here is just some of the stuff that the high school offers, or the junior high school offers right now. And that's more vocational training to, you don't have to go to college, right? You can learn the skills that you need to move on. All of us had them. We can make it better for our kids here because they need better spaces than they have right now for a better learning environment. The new programs that we're looking at, robotics is a chance. When the administration moves, we're gonna have room for more classrooms right there by the media center and that, and we can put some pretty good CTE stuff going in there. And we can add on drafting. If you've been in their drafting room, everything is just tight. There's no room for those for those kids to learn correctly in that environment. And then they do coding now, correct?
Just starting it.
Yeah, we're starting coding, and then marketing can be added on as well. The needs for the CTE, more adaptable spaces for computers. That's not something that the high school or junior high is set up for. It just keeps getting added in and thrown where it can fit right now, as opposed to having a really good system that everything talks to each other. The needs for the skilled technical sciences, different spaces. Spaces that are there right now aren't designed for the type of learning environment they need now for the different curriculum that's happening. So the better the space is, the more conducive to a higher learning that the kids can get. The average class size is growing. So I would say sometimes in welding class, there's probably, 5 years ago, there were 7 or 8 kids in those classes, and now we have 15, 16, 17, 18 kids. We don't have enough space in there. We don't have enough welding equipment for those kids to use it. Same with the wood shop over on the other side. We're bringing in equipment and setting it up with extension cords, instead of using proper outlets and everything, tripping hazards. The dust collectors need to be fixed really bad because it's actually kind of a homemade unit that they're using in there to collect the dust out, and it's pretty inadequate. For agriculture, open the rooms up, give them more than one sink, right? Give them a floor drain in there because, ag is not a clean science all the time, right? You're gonna need to mop, you're gonna need to clean up. They just can't do that right now. So they have to find different spaces to be able to do that instead of in their same classroom.
And to talk about, go over a little bit more the need for the second gym. Again, there'll be questions afterwards, but the space that we have right now is pretty maxed out. Like I said, they're in there from morning till night. We've got a ton of different youth programs that are coming through right now. And it's not just those things. I think Allison had a list of things that the other things that the gym is used for. It's not just for athletic events. It's used for a number of different community events. So when we look at getting the extra gym, it is a space that we hope that we can do more things through the community. We have our veterans program there. We do all of our band and music programs in that space right now. If we were to host any of our district events, we really haven't had the opportunity to because the gym space is not big enough. I think I'm not sure if it says on here, I think most of the seating that in our competitor gyms are 1,000 or more, and I think we're at 750 is about where we are. To be able to host different wrestling meets or different events, it's just we aren't able to do those things right now, and that's part of it. But the big part of it is we're just really running out of space for our kids to be able to compete and to get their practices in. As far as the activities we've got, so with the activities director, we talk about the 1,000 seats on average. It's when we get a good crowd in there, it fills up pretty quickly. We do have a lot of people that tend not to go in. They'll sit out in the commons and they'll kind of shoot the breeze out there and they'll pop in and out. So it would be something that I think the community would, it would be served well, and the kids would very much get served by it.
For the elementary school, we're looking at additional classrooms. We're looking at some building envelope upgrades to seal up some of the bird holes in the exterior. If you've noticed around the elementary school, when you come in the front door over there, birds are nesting inside of the ephes, is what they call it, the exterior there. So we'll do some upgrades, fix some roofs. The windows all need to be replaced. They're all wood framed windows, and you can actually feel air coming through in any classroom, upstairs, downstairs. The safety and security for the For the north side, we're gonna redo the little vestibule up there. It actually separated off the building. It's not attached anymore. So now it's just a wind block, a big heavy wind block. And then adding a storm shelter in the addition. I think that's kind of important. I prefer my kids to have a storm shelter to go to instead of just standing in the hallway, which is what we have going on right now in both schools, right? Especially with all the tornado. I mean, if we can get a tornado in December, right, we can get them a lot. We'll also be adding restrooms and rework in the new pre-K rooms. We'll add restrooms in there as well so they can have their own separate area where they don't have to leave their classrooms to use the restroom, like a bunch of the other classrooms have restrooms already. The daycare is going to get renovated. It's probably not going to quite double in space, but get pretty close to that. We'll also have a secure lock so it's cut off from the rest of the school. The doors, the fire doors will stay shut so that we don't get kids going into the cafeteria. We don't have the staff from daycare cooking food in the cafeteria like they've had to do in the past. Special education, the small group spaces that go on right now under the stairs. How private is that, right? Allison was saying about teammates. You try to meet with a teammate and you're trying to guide them, but you're sitting under the stairs and then all these teachers are walking by, want to talk to you. Or if you're meeting with a kid that's having trouble, do you want to really talk about that in an open space in front of a lot of people that are walking by? Say they're the kid's friends or something like that. You got to give them their own space so they can take care of that. Operable partitions. Well, we're planning on here getting a curtain put up in the middle here. So when we do, which is every winter, have 2 teams practicing basketball in here or 2 different gym classes or something, we can separate that. That's something a lot of gyms have. We just don't have one here.
And then also back here as well, the music room and the cafeteria.
Yep. And then giving staff support some room, copy room and a little break room. The site work, I don't know if you've been back here or not, the alleyway back here, you can actually see into the storm sewer from the pavement. And the pavement's just deteriorated, it's gone. So that's another thing that we need to fix.
So when we look at breaking down the percentages of what we've got, so 58% of this bond is actually going to the facilities and the academic additions and renovations. So we've already talked about new classrooms. You know, high school, it's been 40 years since we've done a major update there. There are so many things that just are timing out. You know, when you go back into mechanicals and Carrie Bickford can speak to those things, they're just wearing out. They're kind of on their last leg. He's been patching things up as best he can. The classroom spaces, we're not teaching on lecture platforms anymore. That happens sometimes, but most of this is coming down to trying to get experiential learning for our students and putting them in a position where they're not just hearing about it, but they're actually doing it. And we don't have the spaces to do that in a lot of our areas right now. So that's a big key for us. So at the high school, you can see there's select classrooms, the CTE again, arts, music, ag, the library media center, and then we got that secure entrance. Sure.
So you guys are all here doing your due diligence to see what makes sense to you, and that's commendable. But seeing it, you have to see it for yourself, I think, to understand how you're going to make your decisions. And that's why we've included pictures here. And this picture is a picture of a class that's happening up on the stage at the high school because there's not room for it. So every day they have to move tables and chairs to and from the stage. Mind you, this is the commons area, which is a really busy, loud area of the school. And then the other side is the gym where they're having PE, and that's not always a quiet environment either. So, and this music area, you see the tiers, and those aren't used anymore. There's no storage for the instruments. So just in this entryway, if you've been to, I know all of you have been to the high school, when you walk in, there you are. So anyway, just kind of going through why those pictures are on there and what they're showing.
The other part of the 58% is the elementary. There'll be 6 new classrooms, some special education rooms, and additional restrooms. All the buildings need new restrooms. The renovations, will redo the pre-K restrooms, as I talked about before. We'll add them into the rooms across the street or across the alley from the cafeteria. We'll take that vestibule off and put a new vestibule up on the north side of the school here, and then some daycare renovations.
And as Allison was saying, this is where I think Allison has had teammates. This is basically under the stairs or behind the stairs, and it's not staged. It happens every single day, and it's pretty constant. I would go up and I would help kids with reading, and I was always out just in the hallway. And that's tough because I would have some of those kids that they would literally stop when people would walk by because they didn't want to hear themselves be stuttering, or they didn't want to hear themselves not getting the words. So it's one of those things we want to have our kids be confident and have a good environment to learn. And if they don't feel safe because they're uncomfortable in the hallway, let's find a space for them. The other one's just, there's some of those meeting spaces that we have that we're trying to squeeze people in. This is Carrie's place here. So these are some of the systems that we go through. In the high school, we've got some major renovation that needs to take place, new fire system, sprinkler system. I really can't talk too much about it because that's not my wheelhouse, but I know from speaking with Dr. Johnson and she's met with Carrie Bickford, who really keeps the place running up there. There are so many things that are just outdated and really not working properly right now. Would you agree that some of our systems probably look more like Frankenstein than anything else? I mean, we're trying to.
You can
patch
just tell by
things.
the boilers system that we got. If you go back and look, we got 3 big boilers, and we had another one for the water. That one was updated probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. It's like this wide and about, I mean, it's real modern. Where the other ones are, 6 foot tall and
Right.
4 foot around. It's just,
And you can
it's
probably
time.
talk.
It's been 42 years, it's time.
Right. They're due.
They're due.
And we just started learning more about the air handlers in this building here. Seems like every year we're losing a handful of those. And we're replacing those. If you could speak.
When they
a little
built
bit.
that, they built it with airline. Now everything's electric, and it's plastic airline. Well, 42 years of that building moving, that you can't keep, I mean, the boiler, the air compressors are running 24/7, and they just don't keep up. So basically what that does is it just shuts the dampers down. So that's why we don't, it's either feast or famine. It's either 80 degrees in there or it's 40, 60 degrees in there.
Right.
It's just, they can't keep up.
And ironically, so roof replacement at the elementary and window replacement, Mr. Dennis was carrying part of the roof in earlier today that came off. So that's another project for Carrie or someone who's gonna hop on the roof and find out where that piece came from. So a lot of things need to be done.
Yeah, that goes with the roof replacement right there. Yeah, pretty much what it comes down to, the electrical gear that's at the high school, it looks like at a Star Trek, William Shatner Star Trek.
It's not even code. You gotta have.
Yeah,
you gotta have so much.
the aisle is about this wide. It needs to be twice as much as that now. In the 70s, that was fine. But now with all the high power, everything that goes into the switches, it has to be 4 foot or greater in width for walking. You can see there, you can see our dust collection system into the trash can right there. That was all built and put together by one of the CTE teachers. I think it was about 20 years ago or something like that.
Mr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did that quite a while ago. The roof, there's the aisle in between our electrical gear there. We got ceiling damage from leaking roofs. There's 3 roofs that got to be replaced. There's 3 different types of roofing systems on each one, or one on each one of them. So we have to we have to replace 3 different types of roofs. And then you can see how much room we got for the wood shop there as well. 15% of this entire budget is going towards multi-purpose addition and renovations. with 6% of it going towards the facility and site maintenance. So the 15%, the addition to the high school is going to be an 11,000 square foot competition gym. It's quite a bit bigger than this one. Gotta like the high ceilings. If you've been to a high school competition for volleyball or even basketball sometimes, the balls are going through the roof, you know, they're going up into the joists. We can have a little higher ceiling, have some more competitive games, especially for volleyball. They have to, it's a competitive advantage for us to have a short roof because nobody's used to coming down and playing with one, right? The renovations are, it also includes the locker rooms, and then we'll redo the locker rooms. And then for the site, we're gonna go through and repave the whole drive circle, hopefully make it a little more standoff so that the buses have their own lanes to go through. And then we'll repave the asphalt parking lot back there. And then we talked about it already for the elementary school campus, it's fixing the service drive back here.
And I was just gonna say, that's, you know, this is what a lot of our labs and rooms look like. They're just, this is, I think, our art room right here, but it's just outdated. There's no natural light in it. This is our state championship dance team practicing in the hallway because that's the only space that was available to them. And they get a lot done there. Obviously, they're incredible at what they do. Full gym. Sidewalks are going. I mean, there's just a lot of things that need to be done.
Design concepts.
So this is Mr. Darren.
You guys have already done my job because you basically walked through everything. We'll just,
Show pictures.
yeah, I just get to show pictures of the fun stuff. So we'll start with the high school site. You can obviously see the additions versus where the existing building sits. Some of the work that we're doing to the site is just addressing some of the issues that are coming into the building with the drop off. And so handling some of the things that just don't work really well on the site as they are right now. So kind of cleaning some of that up. North is up on the plan, or kind of north skewed a little bit, but the addition for the classrooms, so you'll see the two separate additions, and part of why we're doing that is to keep the academics separate from the academics and the public side of the school. And we'll kind of see that in the plan as we dive in, but we talked about the 11,000 square foot gym down at the bottom. That's also adding a commons, some restrooms and things like that. But on the site, it's pretty minimal, the amount of work that we're having to do at the high school, but we are cleaning some things up to make it function a little bit better. As we jump into the plan, you can see up at the top are the new classrooms. So the junior high classrooms, we're strategically placing those so they're sort of off to the side, not mixing those students with the high school students, trying to keep those populations a little bit different. I mean, those kids are getting older, and so starting to adapt them into the school is okay, but we're also wanting to kind of keep those separate. The art room is right there in the middle, and that's also acting as the storm shelter. So the storm shelter was mentioned, but it's actually code. So the current code today requires us to do a storm shelter anytime we upgrade a building to a certain capacity. So because of the size of the additions that we're doing, we're having, code is requiring us to add that storm shelter. And we're minimizing that. We're not making the whole area a storm shelter, but we're putting the storm shelter where it's required to hold the amount of students that we need for the population. So you'll notice we have storm shelters actually down here and up at the art. And that's again to make sure that we're meeting the capacity for the high school or the junior and senior high. So we've got classrooms up there. We're adding a junior science room, art room. It was mentioned we're also adding some science rooms for the high school students. In part, we're doing that just because we need more classroom space. So those old science rooms can be renovated into different functions that are just lacking in the school right now. But that gives us the ability to start over, to start from scratch, design these to be very flexible learning environments for the students. The amount of change that's happened and does happen in curriculum these days is so fast that we are building these to be extremely flexible as well, so that they can continually adapt throughout the course of curriculum changes. I mean, we see curriculum changes in certain districts that are happening every 2 years. So we want the classrooms to be set up to adapt to that change and continue to educate the students and give them the opportunities that they need. So by doing that, we're not just doing that because we need those classrooms, we're also needing the space for classrooms, just general classroom space as well. So that's kind of the academic addition. You'll notice kind of the yellowish color. Those are all the areas that we're touching through renovation. So we talked about the main entry. Moving the office is currently in the middle of the building, which doesn't create that security entrance. You don't have eyes on the street as people are coming to the building. So by moving that out, not only do we create visibility to the site, we also create the opportunity for a parent has to come in and go through the office to check in before they can get, whether they are allowed to go into the school or not. But instead of just opening the doors, and as soon as the second pair of doors are open, whoever it is has total access to the school. So by moving that, it also frees up that area around the media center. And it was mentioned earlier to start to create opportunities for other programs that are currently the school isn't offering just because of the lack of space. So again, trying to build this curriculum, the opportunities for curriculum to continue to grow and give opportunities for those students. And then again, the gym being down at the bottom, there's security entrance or these kind of doors here to shut off the academic areas for the most part, so that we can keep the public access during an event. They wouldn't have access to the entire school. So if you were having an event where you were having multiple teams and coming in for a competition, the relationships to those two gyms being right next to each other, having that shared common space, additional restrooms, but not giving access to the entire school for people just to have full reign. We are creating a little bit of a larger commons too to accommodate that for those kind of events to happen. And then there's just that list that that David and Justin went through, all the code implications that this starts to do. Fire sprinkler systems is another thing that we have to do per code. So we're not doing these things just because, I mean, we're doing them because we want the building to be safer, but we're also required to do them through the state and the current codes. I think I covered everything on the high school. We mentioned a couple of the things. So Justin was talking about the back area here, the service drive that's cracking, and just lots of upgrades that need to happen on the site back there. Originally, I think in the previous version, we were showing the addition kind of happening down here on the south end of the building. But that created some challenges with getting grade levels to be next to each other. I think we ended up with four classrooms or 3 classrooms on one side with one first grade classroom kind of detached, and we wanted to bring them together. So it created an opportunity by moving the addition here to not only help secure the playground back area, because now the building's actually acting as that security piece, but just kind of rearranging where those pre-K kindergarten classrooms would be, and also giving them their own dedicated play area, which again is a code requirement for preschool students. So that's why the plan looks a little bit different than the last time. But again, we're adding a total of 6 new classrooms. And you'll see these abbreviations that are in there. Most of those are those sped rooms that we talked about, whether it's English language or sped classrooms. But we're putting titles on them, but they're really meant to be flexible learning areas for all the different things that we talked about earlier, as far as teammates, or if a kid needs help, not putting them on display, letting them feel comfortable in their learning environment. A lot of times we'll give access right off the classrooms to those small spaces too, so that kids are not having to move around the building a long ways to get to those spaces. They can just access those right off of their classrooms. And so that's what a lot of those littler spaces are. And then we are providing a storm shelter here as well with some of those minor renovations to the daycares that we talked about. And then we're moving early childhood down there at the bottom, you can see, and we're adding some restrooms there. Again, that's a something you're just going to want to have in a preschool or early childhood area for those staff. And then all the roofs we talked about are just all failing, and they're all 20 to 40 or more years old. So that's a lot of the work that's happening here. And then it just creates more opportunities for additional classroom spaces to be used for other functions as well. Now I'm going to hand it off to Tracy and Jay.
The fun part. So this is our cost estimate schedule that we have from Boyd. So they have come up with a line itemization of the project for each school and an approximate estimate for each piece of the project. This is also on the website. So, you know, unless you have your readers with you, I probably can't see much of this, but if you can check it out on the website. Like we said earlier, we have an FAQ where you can ask questions. So if you have questions on a certain line item, you can certainly ask that. You can see down at the bottom, you come to a total, and then there's an additional 12% amount in there for like furniture and equipment and contingency and things like that. And again, Boyd can kind of answer to that line item better than I can. But additionally, then on the left side, the graphic just shows you that what we did to get down to the bond amount is, you know, we looked at the total cost, the estimated cost that we were given by Boyd, and then we kind of backed into the bond amount by saying, what can we use of our building funds that we have? And so we're using a large portion of our building funds that we've accumulated. And then we have another piece that is qualified capital purpose undertaking funds that actually Jay Spearman, who's our bondsman, advised us that we're able to take those bonds out for our HVAC that we're having to replace. So back in the day, your QC Puff funds would be used for like mold abatement and your ADA compliance type of things, you know. And so, but now that's because of just, I think COVID, I believe, kind of changed that a bit to where you can now use those bonds for HVAC replacement, just for cleaner air and that kind of thing. So knowing that we could do that and then use a substantial portion of our building funds, we were able to back into the bond amount, which is the 29.51 million. And then I'll go to the next slide here, and this is Jay Spearman, or I'm sorry, forgot about this slide. Have another slide here that just kind of breaks down the project. All of those line items were put into 4 different buckets. And so the 4 different buckets are facilities and academic additions and renovations. So you can see that 58% of the project is for academic renovations. That's obviously the largest portion of the project. Then we have 21% that are MEP updates, code compliance, and efficiency improvements. Again, that would be all your HVAC, your sprinkler system, that kind of stuff. And then we have a 15% for the athletic edition. I don't even like to call it athletic edition. There's so many groups that use the gymnasiums. I mean, you know, we have speech competitions in there. We have, you name it. We have music programs in there, community events, fundraisers. Yeah, just, it's used for everything. So I don't even really like that it's called athletic, but, you know, obviously we use it for athletics as well. But 15% of the project is for that gymnasium. And then the commons area, which, you know, would need to be larger to accommodate that, concessions and that kind of thing. So looking at the 2, you know, having 2 gyms, it just seems to be, I know this is kind of an area of contention for some of our voters, is that why do you need that second gym? But I think Dave mentioned 6. I have a kid that leaves at 5 a.m. sometimes to get to practice. So it's a long day. You know, these kids do multiple things. They're on multiple sports. And I have a child that leaves at 5 in the morning and doesn't get home till 10 at night sometimes. And that could be shortened if we just had another gym so that we had kids being able to practice at the same time instead of having to come in at the crack of dawn. It's not great for them. So I do want to stress that we're not doing this for fun. It is really a need, and it's something that will be used for sure. But anyway, that shows the different areas. Oh, and the 6% is for facility and site renovations. So, and then next up is Jay Spearman. He's our bondsman from Piper Sandler, and he is going to be talking the numbers specifically. So excuse me.
Thank you. As you can see from the chart we have here, our current district valuation is just a little over 857 million. Because the state legislature passed LB2 last year, which affects the valuation for ag land for any voter approved bonds, it takes the valuation from 72% down to 50%. And that's just for ag land. And so we go from 857 million down to 775 million taxable valuation. Ag land out of the total valuation is roughly about 31%. And because of the revaluation, it drops down to about 24% of this. And so on our current levy for the school district, the general fund's 95 cents, the building fund is 10 cents. The current QC Puff levy is just a little bit over 3 cents for a total of just a tad bit over $1.08. Upon approval of this bond issue, we'll still have the general fund at 95 cents. The building fund goes away with the idea of if you're going to fix everything at all the different facilities, there would be no need for a building fund, at least right away. The bond fund, obviously your current or the old bonds were paid off in 2020. And then our new bond fund levy would be 19.3 cents or 19.3 cents. The QC Puff levy would drop down to 3 cents for a total levy of $1.17.3. And the difference is just a tad bit over 9 cents as compared to what you're currently paying. And that's for a $29.5 million bond issue paid back over 30 years. Keep in mind, when your last bonds were issued in 2000, the school district actually refinanced those bonds 4 times. And that was on a 20-year issue. And so if we're looking at a 30-year issue, even though rates have come up, we're still relatively historical lows. And if a lot of you will notice, just last month, we were at 16.26 cents. The reason for that adjustment is for the simple fact of interest rates have risen. Keep in mind, though, you will have opportunities in the future to refinance these bonds at lower interest rates. A lot of the expert economists have obviously been predicting a little bit higher interest rates. From all the information that we've been able to gather is that we'll probably still continue to see interest rates rise, at least in the short term, but we've got to be pretty close to capping out on that. And so we're looking at a difference of 9 cents as compared to what you're currently paying. And if we turn to the next page, to calculate the tax impact, it's going to be a little bit different for ag land versus residential and industrial property. For ag land, because of the revaluation from 72% down to 50%, you take your ag land value times 0.69. I know that's kind of odd, but that'll take you from 72% down to 50%. You take it times the levy, which is 0.00193. That's the bond levy. And because the ag land value, you go from paying basically tax on 72% valuation down to 50% valuation, we would subtract that off. We would not do that for residential property and commercial property because their valuation is not changed. And so we're reducing it, building fund by 10 cents. And you can see per $100,000 of valuation for ag land, you're looking at an additional tax of $33.17. For $10 million of valuation, we'd be looking at $3,300 of additional tax. For non-agricultural land, residential, commercial, and others, we'd be just looking at the additional 9 cents. And so instead of for ag land, we're at $33.17 per 100,000. For non-ag land, we're at $90.80. And then if you go all the way up to $1 million property, we're at $908. It ranges from on a $100,000 property, a monthly $7.50 to $75. keep in mind, the bond fund is not the same as like the general fund or building fund. The bond fund is the school district asking for a finite amount each year. And so your bond levy is going to fluctuate every year with your valuation. And historically speaking, valuation has trended upwards. And so as valuation increases over the years, the levy will decrease. But what we're asking for is virtually the same.
So this next slide, we've shown in previous presentations before. This just gives a history of the levy. And you can kind of see the levy kind of just kind of getting a little more consistent, I guess, in the last 10 years or so, when the district really honed in kind of on just looking at expenditures and making sure that we're running kind of a nice tight ship and we're not over expending and that kind of thing. But you can see that even if the bond were to pass, the estimated levy would be at $1.17. And I would say down here, it says levy increase for bond 9 cents. You know, again, I would say net levy increase for bond 9 cents, but the $1.17 is still within, I mean, we were at $1.17 back for 1920. So definitely, you know, not crazy high there. In addition, over here, you can see the different valuations and levies for kind of our neighboring school districts in Cass County. I know that both Louisville and Elmwood Murdoch are in the process of trying to pass a bond as well. Then I know that Plattsmouth and Weaving Water have bonds currently. But even with our $1.17, you can kind of see that we fit right in there, keeping in mind that I know Elmwood and Louisville are also trying to pass bonds. So this is just a little bit of data, just comparison type of thing, and just history of the levy for you.
And one thing to keep in mind, as you look at your historical levy, the 1920, the $1.17 levy, that was the last year that you actually levied for the general obligation bonds, which was, I believe, to renovate this facility. And so we would just be basically going back to where we were when we were levying against 4 bonds.
And then this slide is just kind of like a public service announcement. It's just kind of letting you know that there was, and maybe everybody in here already knows this, but there was some legislation that was passed back in 2020 where you're actually getting a property tax credit on your Nebraska state return. And so there's a form, and it's just the PTC form. So if you've already filed your taxes, you know, if this doesn't sound familiar to you, maybe look at them again, and maybe you need to do an amended return. But basically what it does is it takes the tax that you have paid to your local school district, just that piece. So when you get your tax statement, you know, there's a portion that goes to like the county and the school and the, you know, Murray Fire and all sorts of different entities. Just that piece that goes to the school, you actually take that, and for 2020, it was 6%. You multiply that times 6%, and you actually get that as a credit on your Nebraska state return. So it's a dollar for dollar reduction of your tax liability. That was actually increased for 2021 tax year, so you should have gotten a 25% credit on your Nebraska state return, which is pretty substantial. And from what I've read, it sounds like that is supposed to continue on. So I would just say, if this doesn't sound familiar to you, or if someone else does your taxes, maybe look and see if you got that credit. But it's kind of a nice little property tax relief that was just done in the last couple of years. So just keep that in mind. And design construction schedule.
Okay. We're up against time here, so I'm going to fly through a couple of topics really quickly. One of the common questions we get is, if the bond passes, then what happens next? So right now, what you've looked at is a pretty conceptual, high-level design. So we would jump right into this process right after the bond passes. This is kind of the next steps. And DLR, your team of architects and engineers, would be jumping right into the design process. That's divided into 3 sections, going from a very high-level schematic design and adding more detail along the way until you get to construction documents that can be put out on the open market and bid out to subcontractors and suppliers. So the timeline for that, we're looking at schematic design, that first phase happening in May and June, design development happening in July and August, and then starting construction documents in September for a late fall or winter bid day. And then once that happens, we look at beginning construction in the spring of 2023 and final completion in December of 2024, so that everybody could move back into those spaces and use them in the spring semester of 2025. So a few things about what's happening during that design process. What we do, we get a lot of questions given the current market conditions. I'm sure you've heard about cost escalation and volatility in the market. So we get questions about what we do to ensure transparency and cost control. So I just wanted to run through a couple of those things really quickly. Mitch and his team would be the ones developing the detailed estimate right away. So once we jump into schematic design, our team would be putting together a very detailed estimate and then using a tool like this to track any decisions that are made that impact the schedule and budget, what their impact is and why those decisions were made. So we have a constant accounting of what's going on with your budget throughout the entire design process. And the whole team between the district, the architects and engineers, and the construction team can make decisions about what's best for the project to ensure cost control. The chart that you see over there, since the beginning of the pandemics, we've been seeing interruptions to the supply chain. We've been seeing a lot of cost escalation. So we started tracking commodities prices. All of those raw material inputs to the construction process are fluctuating. We are projecting out what might be happening to those materials at the time this project bids out. And we're trying to apply those projections so that we have an accurate idea of what the market will look like on bid day, since that's still several months out into the future. A couple of other things that we're doing, we're putting together a detailed phasing and scheduling plan. So an example of that is over there on your left. And then we're doing constructability reviews. So we're using our experience and knowledge of codes and technology in this case to try to identify problems early in the design process and identify solutions before we're out in the field spending extra time and money trying to resolve those issues. So that's what constructability is all about. Last slide here. One of the other things that we do to ensure cost control is a lot of subcontractor and supplier recruitment. We want to get as many competitive bids as possible. So Mitch and his team will reach out to all of the subcontractors and suppliers in the area. We have a database that we reach out to. We often host events where we'll walk through the plans and make sure everybody understands how to submit their bids. We get as many as possible. And then on bid day, we'll put together a bid tabulation like this that identifies all of the bids that were received, what the costs were and what the scopes were, so that we can make sure we provide the best information possible to the district to make decisions about which subs and suppliers to use. So just a few things we do there, and I'll turn it back over to Allison. We'll be happy to answer questions after this.
Yeah, so just to wrap it up with some important dates. Early voting ends the day before the election, which is Monday, May 9th. And that is another thing to note that we've actually, this is not part of this and I'm just adding it. We're having our school board meeting on Monday instead of Tuesday because of election day. So that's something different for the month of May. May 2nd, final day for early voting ballot applications to be submitted. May 4th is our next meeting and that's at the high school. And May 10th is the election day. Another thing that is not on the agenda, as I kind of go off and find my own way every once in a while, I want to thank Dr. Beth Johnson for her service to Conestoga. I know many of you have worked with Beth either as a parent, a community member, a staff member, or as a board member. And so she is leaving Conestoga and we're very thankful for her service. And at the same time, I want to introduce Mr. Mike Apple, who has been nice enough to drive 5 hours to be with us today, and he will be serving as superintendent for an interim period of time. So we're welcoming him for that, whatever that looks like. So thanks for being here, Mike. Really appreciate it. And I'd also like to open it up to some questions. So if you don't mind, just maybe, I think we can hear well enough. We're packed in close enough. You can just ask your question and get the appropriate team member to answer it. Does that sound good? Okay. Who wants to go first? Mr. Murdoch. That's all right.
Okay, so professional building fund, $2.5 million.
2 point. Yep.
All right. So you're talking about a couple of questions about that. You got this money in here, you got problems in school and having to predict how come they have to fix them already. With that money, we've been taxing for it, how come we're not using it?
What I would say to that, I guess my initial response to that is that, these are big things. These are the things that need to be done in the schools are large things. We've been trying to get this bond passed now for a couple of years. We actually started in 2019. So these things were out there. I guess I can't speak to prior boards and that. I can't speak to that, but I know when I got on the board, there wasn't much of a building fund. But knowing that our old bond was rolling off and that we were having things that were starting to fail, we knew it was an issue. So that's why we started. We thought, this is one first time. That building fund built up for that reason. Because if this doesn't pass, this time, we will start. We will start. We have to do windows. We have to start our things. So there just wasn't the funds there. But we have them now. And I don't know if that's a satisfactory answer for you, but I'm just telling you that like I said, when I got on board, there wasn't much of a building fund at all. And these problems have been in the works for a while. It was coming, we thought, it's still for a bond here, and it's not probably getting it passed. But then as we've got some of the building funds out, if it doesn't pass this time, we're sure going to use them.
How much a year would that annually bring in the building of that?
About 800,000. And Dwayne, you got to remember, it's $1.05 total levy, right? Until we could drop down below that $1.05 in the last 6-7 years, we've been at 95. We now could start doing that 10 cent, or we started at 4 cents and then 6 cents and 10 cents. Then that added up to that $1.05. We've been at a $1.05 levy forever until the last.
Levy that to get back to $1.05?
Yes, until we could get below that $1.05 total levy, could we start putting money into that special building fund?
Okay, so
Dwayne, had to tie it together. That was kind of what we're doing. So we were working with $1.05. You recall the financing issues that we went through. So the special building fund is in the $1.05 levy. So for the longest time, when we were trying to get our head back above water and just survive and pay down the debt, the special building fund was here for this exactly zero. And as my last year on the board, we just started to put a 0.5% or 10 or 2 back into that to get a little bit of money built back into it, because we were just finishing off. At my time, we thought it was more important to build up the cash, general cash reserves. Once we got that to a certain point, then we would go back to putting a little bit back in the special building fund. And there's some percentages that when I left, I kind of gave the board when I left. I go, you guys kind of need to hit these target levels to build the depreciation fund back up to X and the special building fund back up to X. And as I left, that's about the time that they were no longer needing the full $1.05 or general fund or to build up our cash reserves, so we weren't borrowing money mid-year. So I think after I left, when they started taking some of the special building fund out of the dollar, they didn't need the full $1.05.
And I like this slide too. Thank you so much, Gary. It talks about the mechanical, electrical, plumbing updates, code compliance and efficiency. That percentage is $7 million. So $7,212,000. So that's a lot of dollars.
so.
It's $7 million, yeah.
So we take the dime and this levy, the new levy bond, right, on the bond, right? They can reimpose that dime again because they're gonna go back to 95%. So you could do this project and next year after the bond was passed, you can turn around and tax it for another dime.
I mean, legally, that's the way nobody's intention on.
I know that, but the board's changed. You get a new board, believe me, board changed, they don't change.
They got you and you now.
You're in trouble. Yeah, so
Boards do change.
they do, they change. You gotta remember that every everything is futuristically, this is a 30-year bond. Right. I mean, it doesn't mean anything today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and the overall inflation, and they will give more. And evaluations will go up.
Levy will go down.
That's right, but your overall tax will never drop. If you're paying 1,000 now, you will not be paying 800 when the evaluation is done. But you're always going to pay 1,000. The levy will change, correct? It will change, yes, but you're still going to pay the same dollar. Because the bond was 1.3 million, which will be more than that. Dan and I talked about the other day, it's more than that. So those dollars still got to be generated, the same amount of dollars.
Correct.
The levy is.
Valuation will increase, levy will decrease. The total dollars coming out of the district will maintain.
One of my biggest worries right now is $4 gas, and everybody's budget is going to be able to handle all this. And it seems it's about a lot. Not so bad in the Midwest, but the COVID. So everybody, I'm just concerned about those things.
2008 was an anomaly, and those people lost their homes because they made bad decisions. It's not the same as why the economy is what it is. Not the same.
I wouldn't say it's an anomaly. When the 80s happened. And that was worse than 2008.
You don't think it was an anomaly that people lied with the loans that they got to get approved for loans? Yeah, I mean, it was a stated income that
You still had financial officers who look over the paperwork, they give the loan down. Just don't blame it on the home buyer.
I'm not just blaming it on that. But at the same time, the home buyers have to take some responsibility.
And right now, we're doing phenomenal of economic proportion all across the country. Barely recovered from COVID lockdown. So, we lost me on everything. You can rent it and go up and stuff like that because other people are talking on the loans. The interest rate right now is better.
I think interest rates went down because of that. They've recently gone up, but they dropped to all-time lows because of 2000.
They're significantly lower, as James pointed out earlier, they're significantly lower. In fact, when we passed the bond 20 years ago, I think 9% was one of the.
I think it was 8. Did you say 8?
3.7.
Yeah, interest rates when you originally issued the bonds back in 2000 ranged from 7.3 to 9.55. You issued the bonds in 2000, and then in 2001, interest rates obviously were less, and they did an advanced refunding. And then in 2007, refunding, 2011, refunding, 2016, refunding. Dwayne's comment about, ultimately valuation is going to go up, the levy is going to go down, but you're going to be roughly paying the same is absolutely correct, absent any new valuation. And when I say new valuation, that's new valuation in the district. That's not taking a current asset and just reappraising it higher. That's if someone comes in and builds a new building or a new home or something like that. Absent that happening, you'll be paying roughly the same.
Usually the land is really the cost of the business increase, teachers increases. It's all that new valuation is barely keeps up with all that. I don't care if it's school level, county level, just barely get enough valuation.
I will say that I visited the Cass County zoning office recently, and the gal that works there, and I wish I could remember the name, but the gal that works there has worked there for a long time, said it's the busiest they have ever been. She said normally over the winter they can kind of get a break. She's like, it's been go, go, go. So there's definitely a lot going on, and I understand what you're saying as well, Dwayne. But it's definitely, things are happening in the county, and we have to be somewhat prepared for that. And no, that doesn't mean that every family that builds a house in the county is coming to Conestoga, but it does mean that there's certainly potential for it to happen.
Other questions?
Broken road, tried to pass it.
How come we didn't look at just building a brand new building like a high school?
Someone speak to the broken bow, I think we have to discuss that,
No, I'll make a comment on the larger amount though, is we did a survey officially with this on what people were willing to spend and the cost for a new building, the results we got back at people in this point, that was very low. That was kind of our initial conversation on that.
and I guess where I'm going with that is the broken bow, this was what I was asking you about the other day, because we had seen that as well. And what they were trying to do, we don't, who was it that was working on that job?
Yeah, I mean, we weren't the construction manager on that job. We did take a look at it. The estimates that were developed for that project must have been developed a long time ago and not escalated because no evidence on any big project over the last couple of years that still the work has been done.
So their estimates, at least,
So the $29 million percentage.
of what they were
They
saying.
were building a building, I think.
It would probably.
They wouldn't have built the whole thing.
Or they wouldn't have any furniture, or they would have super cheap paint or a different type of wood, or a less efficient heat system, or a different kind of flooring, or smaller parking lots.
The size of the addition, I think the 29 million might have covered the addition. None of the renovations, none of the furniture purchase and equipment.
And I don't know why it didn't pass, maybe that was why they were like,
Very
"Can't buy it," but
November and
They're just.
I'm sure that was.
And it's different, you know, there's a lot of passion. The revenues can generate how big it is, just.
The fact of the matter is, we don't need, I mean, for the population that we have and the growth that we're looking at, we don't need. A classroom.
So what classes did we add to high school? That we, just in the last year, we had that new stage. Because that wasn't like that. We don't have that much.
What are some of those classes,
I-
Rob? What
Mr.
classes
Guy?
up on the stage?
Some of that comes from Rule 10, but for example, having to offer health classes.
Careers, currently we do have, a teacher to class and another teacher's, in another teacher's room. So that teacher visits her room kind of during her playing time. So they are sharing classrooms already. Maybe after all that stuff coming up, some education courses, education, some of that was impacted by the rules as well. Adding public status, but some. And then we want to accept person space that we need of their need to. One example would be, we had to conduct testing for like the nation came in and we had to test. So we had to find a classroom to use that. So that's when we used math classroom, math teacher. We've opted into a few different classrooms and granted that was the thing, but the teachers are very functional. Both buildings got related.
So Allison mentioned a little bit about DLR and how we do our programming. And what we would have done is gone through your entire master schedule of all the classes that are offered, how many students are taking those classes, and then what is the space required to serve those students. And part of that is we're also looking at projections into the future too, so that we're not building capacity for today, but we're also making sure that whatever project you guys end up doing, that we're handling future growth, because we know that the district is growing. And so that's part of all the work that we did up front, is to come up with We weren't throwing darts at a plan to try to figure out how much space you needed. It was all based off of your existing classes that are offered, students that are taking it. Are there opportunities that students aren't being given because they don't have enough classroom space? All of that is kind of built into how we develop the plans for those program spaces. So.
Thank you, Darren. Is anybody interested in, if you have more questions, that's fine too, but if anybody's interested in a tour of this building, I know Mr. Dennis would love to take you and show you the piece of the roof that blew off last night. Or to see you walk around the building and ask any questions. So that's certainly available if anybody's interested in that.
No, the roof is one thing we thought would be right.
The addition roof is holding up great. The slant,
You mentioned those beams in the high school.
I believe those were all here.
Oh, here. Okay, I was gonna say the high school one.
Yeah, the roof.
That addition here, this little roof, you don't see that very often in school. It's the older parts of the building.
So are these new additions that you're gonna have over?
I think now we're just assuming flat membrane that roof.
Don't say flat. Low slope.
I think on one part you could probably start gardening up there.
Yeah, you can.
There's enough soil up there that there's grass.
That's cool.
Which we do green roofs, but not
That wasn't this
usually
way.
intentionally.
Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate your interest in the project and getting information so that you can make decisions. We're having another meeting that will look a lot like this on Wednesday, but it'll be at the high school. You can always send questions to us. I do encourage you to look at our website. We do try to keep that information updated the best we can as well. So
So you're gonna get it updated tonight.
it is, yep, yep. That is, yeah.
And I'm very good.
Wayne, I want to finish one last thought. Semi-relevant. They're talking about the 95 cents. We were looking on that as I was going off. Your levy is $1.05. They dropped to 95. The reason it went to 95 is because of that. The state that money actually any kind of any form for the following year. So actually, if you can get by on a 93-cent levy, don't do it because you're better off charging the other 2 cents because the state is taking 200,000 away from you the following year.
So you get any state aid, you don't get any.
Well, and he's talking about like any of that, those federal programs that we still get, like any IDEA, ESSERS, any of these grant monies. You're right, any of the smaller districts in the state of Nebraska, we continue to lose more money on any of our state and federal aid and state aid. 20% of the school districts in Nebraska receive state aid. We're one of that 80% that don't get state aid.
But you can try to cut the last penny or two, save your taxpayers $100,000, and you end up just taking 400,000 from the state the following year. So I mean, there's kind of little tricks and reasons that it goes to certain cents, but that's just another thing you have to watch.
I don't remember this.
No, there weren't many.
These guys don't know how to dig out.
But we had COVID. That wasn't super awesome. Yeah,
There was decisions made when Dennis and I and Harold were working for that.
I know, and I'm sorry.
Harold.
I know.
I spoke with Jay as I walked in today, there's some things that we did that then that are no longer legal.
We're not going to talk about those, Gary.
No, they were legal in,
Okay.
they're just very creative with our funding.
Yeah, you were, and thank you. All right, well, thank you all. It's a beautiful day. The wind is less than 50. Go enjoy it.